Welcome, everyone. It is such a pleasure to have everybody here, and welcome to the Woman in the Spotlight. So just let me share with you this. This series provides the opportunity to hear from women like us and how they show up as leaders in all aspects of their lives. And they will share with us some of the struggles and successes that they have had along the way. And today, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Liza Streiff. Liza and we've known each other for a few years now, and we've worked together on projects, for high performance leaders and teams. And what I can tell you about Liza, she is just an incredible young woman as a human being and as a leader. Just to let you know about a little bit of her background, Liza is the youngest and first female CEO of Nopman Marks Financial Training, a training company that has trained hundreds and of thousands of professionals to pass the high stakes securities licensing exam. That in itself can be, even hearing that, impressive to people, right? But in her 3 years as a CEO, revenue has increased by 87% and the number of full-time employees has tripled. That's an impressive record. So welcome, Liza. I'm so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, Bernadette, and just be a part of whatever it is that you're doing, because you are such an inspirational person to learn from and to be able to get to know. So thanks for
Thank
having
you. Thank you. Now, is there's, I've shared more about your background and your career. Is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about yourself before we go into our discussion, Liza?
me. Sure. Well, I have 3 kids, so I think that's pretty important, because if we're gonna get real here and talk about our strengths, but our challenges, leading as a mom and a parent is a lot. So that's something to know about me. I'd also add that I was the third employee at our company. So my story is a little bit different than other people's, because I was building the business that I'm now running today. And that's been a really pivotal part of my journey, just being able to be there as we built it into what it is.
Thank you, Liza. Now, Liza, you've gone a long way, just like, you've had a lot of experiences in your life. And what is the first maybe situation or defining moment in your life that you feel really had that impact on you as a young woman and as a human being?
Wow, right out the gate. Great question. Um, I always go back to when I was in college. I was a freshman in college, and pretty much up until that time in my life, it was pretty simple. I came from a big family, so there was lots always going on in our house, but it was a pretty average upbringing. And when I was a freshman in college, my older brother, who is about 2 years older than me, was diagnosed with cancer. And that was the first really big event in my life that was just completely, of course, outside my control, but really just knocked me down. I was 18-year-old kid, and my hero, in essence, this really tough rugby player, kind of guy that you just couldn't help like he's so nice and just fantastic. And he got diagnosed with cancer. It was it was life changing for all of us. And watching him navigate that experience really shaped how I've navigated many experiences ever since, because it showed me my experience by learning from my brother, showed me that there was a way to navigate adversity that I had certainly never done myself. I was pretty much falling apart all the time, angry at the world, or kind of frantic when making decisions, and in that moment, right, of stress and overwhelm. But my brother wasn't that way. He was coming from a place of peace, of centeredness, really of acceptance, I think. of what was going on in his life. And that gave him, even though in a way it seems contradictory because he was so weak at that time, physically, it gave him such power. He had, clarity around decision making, that was literally life or death. And the way that he navigated that situation, I think, will always be something that I refer back to as an example, as a model of what's possible, that there's another way to navigate the storms that come at us and the adversity that we face. And, even though that was a personal example and, wasn't in my professional life, it really showed me, looking back, the first example of a centered leader. And what all good leaders do, in my opinion, is also build other leaders. And I think that that's what he did, because just 1 year later, when there was something else, of course, I didn't expect and I couldn't control in my life, I was aware of myself being different in that experience, maybe even similar to the way he had faced that situation. And again, I just realized there was another way. And that's how I have really approached most of my life since. Obviously there's many ups and downs and nothing goes perfectly, but I always remember that. And especially as I've worked with a team or building a team or, having the opportunity myself to actually be a leader, remembering the power, that you can radiate through your energy and how you show up and how you weather the storms of life, ultimately become everything. So that's one that always stands out.
You just shared something here. First of all, such a powerful experience. But you say, one of the roles of the leader is to develop leaders, and I know you believe in that deeply, right? And that is, it's not that easy to do, to develop leaders at all, right? And so all the lessons that you've learned have allowed you to do that. What do you, for anybody who says, yes, I am actually in charge of a team and I want to develop my leaders, but I don't know how to do that. What is there a tip here, just right, that you can think of, that an advice that would be really, or a question or something that would allow them just to get that process going, if you want, and for them to feel better equipped?
Well, I would say, what people always say, right, as parents, is your kids are going to listen to what you do, not what you say. So the first thing I think when developing other leaders is really being honest with yourself, being honest with ensuring that what you're asking of others, or how you want them to show up, is congruent with how you show up. Because that is, going to speak volumes, and you're going to be modeling that. All of us are looking for reference points, looking for examples, looking for models of what could this look like? How can that portray itself? And I think, that's one of the important reasons for this series, is to be able to model more examples of just real leadership, in more women, in that way. So I would say first step is definitely getting honest with yourself and being intentional around how you show up. But then also setting some values, setting some agreed upon and shared values and guiding principles that, you expect your leaders to also strive for. But, also training, because education is also very important, and it's a different skill set. If you're asking people to manage, it's definitely necessary that they learn how.
Right. Now, when you talk about centered leadership, Liza, I mean, this to me, the way that I look at it is centered leadership is all around, right? You and I, we absolutely believe it shows up in our life, not just professionally, but in our personal life, how we operate in the world around us. How important is that to you, that centered leadership, awareness and behavior?
I'd say it's paramount. You bring up it's in work, it's out of work, right? I have 3 young kids. sometimes things are hectic, right? And if I am also coming from a place of reactiveness, it's just going to add to that chaos versus coming from a place of security and confidence and being a stabilizing force. And I think we all understand it when you talk about small children, but it really is, it's the same in your professional environment. I think back to COVID when, oh my gosh, I was, I think, 3 months into the role as CEO when COVID happened. And I mean, what was the number one thing that served me through that time that helped me lead and scale our business through one of the hardest seasons of our business? Being that calm, stabilizing force that could weather the storm. Because that is what people need in those times of crisis and uncertainty. And you have to find a way to get there. And it doesn't just happen if you're in the fray all day long and if you're in putting out every fire that's coming in, but cultivating that space for yourself to pull from is so critical. And it doesn't just happen, right? Nobody's walking around just, oh, I'm just so immune to the stress of the day. I'm just going to stay centered no matter what happens, right? It's a very intentional way of just prioritizing basically whatever it has to get done can really only get done as well if you are prioritizing your energy first. What do you need? How are you feeling? Are you even sleeping, right? Some basic things that if you're not taking care of those bare minimum things, it's going to be very hard to not only execute your work, but to lead from a place of that type of center.
Right, absolutely. So well done, well said, Liza. Now, Liza, I am sure, and I'm going to make an assumption, but I have the feeling that you are going to agree with me, is that, as you alluded, is not every day is a good day. We are not superwomen. We may look like it, but it's not, right? So in those days that are not, said, oh my gosh, what's today? What do you do? What do you do? Do you have a network or a few core people who you open up? How do you just go about those days that sometimes your feeling is it's too much?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
That is a great question. And I think what comes to mind are a couple things. First is if I am thinking that today is, a hard day, and maybe, sure, global pandemic, yeah, I'll give you that. That's like an unexpected, really hard moment. But if it's just an average, Tuesday and things are stressful and running me down, and I'm feeling, oh, this is such a hard day, the first thing that I need to really acknowledge is that what are my expectations? What are my expectations around how this day is going to go or how work is in general? So I think the first thing is approaching work with basically the expectation is that things are going to happen. I show up to work to solve problems. So if there's a day without that, I mean, that's amazing, but I think that's just the paradigm shift of approaching life, which instead of being surprised that things aren't working out, being ready for it, because that's why you got out of bed in the morning, right? So I would say that's the first thing, is the perspective in which I approach that quote unquote stress. And then second is absolutely having those key protocols, those people in place that I need to lean on. Going back to COVID example for a second, I think one thing that was really, really hard through that time was how quickly all of those support systems, those infrastructures that we didn't even realize we had running in our life, just kind of disappeared overnight, because all of a sudden you were at home, you didn't have your regular routine, you didn't have the FaceTime with the people you normally did, or whatever it was in your life. And I hit a point where I was so burnt out, and I had to really come to terms with myself that, yeah, I don't have those same support things I did have before, but I need to find new ones because they're everything, right? And I've really learned how consistency around those things is what it's all about. It's never something I will graduate from. If I have, if I really did some self-care one week or saw some friends or did something healthy or good for myself, and I had this great week where I was really feeling good, um, you can kid yourself into thinking that I'm good now. I'm all right. I don't need to do that for a while. No, like that's basically just waiting for things to keep piling up again, and then you getting overwhelmed or burning out. What I learned through that time was really setting up a lot of consistency around, whether it's a self-care thing, whether it's exercise, whether it's touch points with friends, because they're everything. They keep you going. And if you can't text somebody on a, middle of the day and say, oh my gosh, today I really need to vent to somebody, and it's just some random chain of your best friends that are going to say, oh my gosh, okay. You're isolated in it, and sometimes that's all you need to just let me clear it and keep going throughout my day. So I don't know. I could go on and on about that one, because there are a lot of I guess you could say tips or tricks that I would recommend.
Yes, that's wonderful. So, as there's one last question that I would like to ask you, Liza, is, there's I hear a lot of individuals, women in particularly, who are really doing their best, to balance their responsibility, professional and personal, right? It's a never-ending, story, because that's what life is about. And sometimes we do it better than others, but there's those, we struggle with that, is how do you balance? I mean, you're doing really well. You're leading a company. You have a beautiful family, and I know how dedicated you are to them. How do you balance all those responsibilities? Find the joy, because I know that is something that is very important for you. Find the joy in your work. Find the joy in your personal life, and for yourself. So then you don't lose yourself in the process, because unfortunately, a lot of women, we tend to do that. We're such by nature nurturers that we're the last one that we take care of. And that is contradictory to what we want, actually. How do you handle that,
Yeah, great question. So in my work specifically, we study high performance, we observe high performance in our students, we teach high performance. And the aspect that I am personally very curious about lately is the idea of not just becoming a high performer, but sustaining high performance. And I think that touches on what you're getting at, because, there might be so many women out there, and I know there are so many women out there who are killing it. They are accomplished. They are high performers. But how do you keep that going and so often you hear women feeling that they just don't have a choice. Like they need to choose between keep going at that rate or choose their family or quit, right? It's just, they can't imagine another way. So for me, I've really enjoyed learning more about the science of how does burnout happen? What is going on? And how do we avoid it? So the first is knowing that elite performers, they do things a little bit differently. They don't have the same issues of guilt and shame around self-care that we do, right? If you think about a top athlete, what do? They oscillate performance. So they have times of intensity, and then they have times of what's called active recovery. And it's not because they're lazy, and it's not because, they're spoiled or, doing something, oh, you're doing something for yourself. No, it's because they are smart, because they know that they need to care for this thing that is driving them forward. So I think that's the first thing, is really shifting the paradigm, shifting the narrative on self-care and really just being smart about it, not just only for yourself, but as a leader, because that's also what we need to model to teach our teams. It's not just burnout central. You don't want to just stay busy until you run yourself into the ground. Prioritize and model what it looks like to sustain that kind of performance by taking care of yourself. And really, what's that common saying that they say when you get on an airplane is put your oxygen mask on first. And whether you are a executive or you are a mother or a caretaker in any way, if you take nothing away from this other than that is not a selfish thing, it is the most loving thing you can do for the people around you, for the business you serve, for the clients you serve, for your children, whoever, is to prioritize your own well-being, getting to that place of centeredness, of acceptance, of letting go of whatever it is that you need to reclaim your energy, reset, and reclaim your power. That is where you're going to drive impact. That is where you're going to lead with much more love with the people around you. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Liza. It's just wonderful. And you're absolutely right. It's just beautiful. It's a loving thing to really prioritize yourself. I absolutely agree with you. You've shared so many just ideas and insights. And I know that whoever is listening to us today is going to gain some great gems that they can apply to support them and for the future. So Liza, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Thank you. Anytime. Always happy to chat with you. And thanks so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.